All right, in big E3 news, a franchise that is near and dear to my heart, Advance Wars, is coming back from the dead. I thought this franchise was absolutely toast, and I love it. I'm someone who's had all the Advance Wars games, and when the franchise died in the mid 2000s, when they tried to do that gritty reboot, I was sad, but at the same time, I was like, you know what? Based on the way those games are designed, it's kind of a dead end. There isn't really anywhere to go from a design perspective, from a story perspective, versus its sibling game Fire Emblem, which is more of an RPG. You can take that framework and apply different characters, tell different stories, and it's just a lot easier to make something more sustainable out of that framework than Advance Wars. And so I just assumed Advance Wars is dead. Why would they put any sort of energy or time into it when this Fire Emblem thing is really taking off right now? And yet here we are. It's 2021. Advance Wars is back with a remake of 1 and 2. Is it a remake? Is it a remaster? I think it's a remaster of Advance Wars 1, Advance Wars 2 Reboot Camp, out in December. And I am of a few minds of this. I think part of me is just happy to see it back. I thought that the franchise was long dead and there was no reason for anybody to talk about it again, other than like, remember back in the day when Advance Wars was amazing, and it was kind of that gateway game that opened the door for stuff like stuff like a Fire Emblem to work out here, stuff like XCOM to come back, stuff like Mario Rabbids. And it's good to see that old name back and play those games and hopefully introduce it to a new audience that hasn't had a chance to play those games, because they've only been on the GBA and I think the Wii U Virtual Console, and we know how like 5 people bought a Wii U. So this will be an opportunity to do that again. My bigger concern is the way that it's bundled. It's Advance Wars 1 and 2. They're selling them for $60, like full price. And I have a hard time seeing that package work well. It's a pretty steep price. I know those are both 2 full-length campaigns. It's gonna have multiplayer. They've added online as well, and that's fantastic. But it feels like a pretty high price point for remasters of older games, and it's questionable if it's worth $60. I think my bigger concern is that I think it's going to be a tough pill for people outside the Advance Wars fandom to be like, yeah, let me go pick up this game, just because that it's a different thing from Fire Emblem, and it doesn't necessarily have the same sort of story hooks. There's no real characters to get attached to in the same way as Fire Emblem, because all the units are just disposable, and it's primarily about the strategy of managing your armies. I would have even preferred if they just split the games into 2 and sell me Advance Wars 1 for $30 and sell me Advance Wars 2 for $30. I know that would probably mean Advance Wars 1 would sell well and 2 would sell worse, but I feel like having that lower price point would help to get more people into the door. And I think it's important for Advance Wars to get more people into the door, because I would like to hope and pray and dream that there is a future for Advance Wars outside of just re-releasing the old games. I think there are ways it can be done, but I don't think you can just release those old games again. And I don't think you can just make new games based on those old games, because we know how that story ends. We already know how that ends. You're gonna make this game, you're gonna make these maps, you're gonna add a couple more new units, and it's gonna get stale, because there's only so much you can do within the Advance Wars framework in the way that it is currently constructed. I do think there are ways to shake things up to make it a more sustainable thing. I'm not sure if Nintendo's ready to make any of those moves with the Advance Wars franchise. Let's look at the chat here. Good morning, JF Raptor. Ian says, similar to Frosty's argument, Metroid Dread versus Hollow Knight Hard to recommend Advance Wars at $60 when Wargroove is right there and half the price. Metroid Dread versus Hollow Knight, I think, is a slightly different argument. And look, Hollow Knight's a masterpiece. It's my favorite Metroidvania game ever. I've never beaten a Metroid game, which we'll get to a little later. I've beaten Hollow Knight, and Hollow Knight is one of the best games I've ever played. That said, I do think that Metroid Dread, at least coming out as a brand new game with new ideas, new graphics, I think that is fine as a $60 game. You know, someone might still would prefer to take Hollow Knight at a at a lesser price. I think it's okay on paper that Metroid Dread is $60. The challenge for Metroid Dread is it going to be as good as Hollow Knight? And that's a different discussion. Wargroove is one of the things that I think Nintendo should be keeping tabs on, because I feel like I should have articulated this so that when I cut this for YouTube, here's like 3 different ways that Advance Wars could excel in 2021, and I think one of those things is taking from Wargroove. I don't think Advance Wars necessarily has to be a full price game, at least in the way that it's currently constructed. The idea is to continue with Advance Wars as here's a series of maps and some online multiplayer, and then we add some more units here and there, make it a cheaper game. Don't bother with the updated 3D visuals. Keep it cheap and keep it to something that you can sell at a lower price point to get more people through the door. I think that is one viable path for Advance Wars to succeed in 2021. Path number 2, a brand new game. And I think you go, if you're going to keep it with a similar scale of like you're working through a campaign from A to B, I think you need, 1, better graphics. 2, I would also look again at Wargroove, and I'd look at the way they implemented hero units, where not all of the units are, just disposable. You have 1 or 2 units that have names and faces, and they're a little more powerful, and maybe they can evolve in some way, shape, or form as well, just to give you some sort of like in-game narrative push, and that they're more part of the story versus them just talking in cutscenes. And I think that's another way they could do it. And I had a third way, and now I cannot remember what it was. But the Into the Breach sort of style. If you're able to make it, like, structure the game in such a way that, whether it's randomly generated levels or you're selling packs of levels or it's a mobile game, something where you're taking that Advance Wars experience, making it bite-sized, making it more easily repeatable, because Advance Wars is right now is a very fixed campaign, and those levels take like an hour each to beat. But if you make it a bite-sized thing and it's something that's easily repeatable and you can generate maps over and over again, I think it would work in that format as well. I just really struggle to see Advance Wars exist the way it did before in 2021, especially when we've seen what those games will end up being. And there's more competition now because we've seen what Fire Emblem can do. We've seen what Into the Breach can do. And look, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of Wargroove. That game apparently sold pretty well too. And that has ideas that push further than what Advance Wars did. So it feels like I am concerned that, just rehashing Advance Wars with, different graphics isn't going to be enough in modern times. As much as I love that franchise and want to see it succeed in 2021. Ian says, yeah, I think what the formula really needs is a better reward, because you don't improve your army from chapter to chapter. It doesn't really feel like you're getting anything when you finish except more of the same. To a certain extent, yes. You get to as you progress, they'll give you access to different types of army units and stuff like that, but it's not that big of a reward. And I think it needs to be more than that going forward. So we'll see. I just fear, my biggest fear is that, Nintendo finally gave this game a chance and said, hey, let's bring Advance Wars back. And they bring it back the wrong way, and then they bury it again, this time even deeper than it was before. It was dead for like 15 years, But if this one flops, I'm just scared that we'll never, ever, ever see Advance Wars again, and that would be a real shame.